The more you learn about wine, the more you realize how nuanced and intricate it really is. And if you've got the kind of mind that likes to sort of follow all these little details, then it just becomes an endlessly fascinating subject. Montenegro is so fascinating because the domestic industry is very new. So there was ample room for lots of new types of wine to be introduced to the Montenegrin market. Like you rarely, if you were to do something like this in London, you'd be going into an extremely well-developed market, with extremely high degree of knowledge. In Montenegro, it was very nascent, so there was a lot of room to really grow and develop the market and sort of push it in the right direction. When Montenegro first became a country, it had just come out of international sanctions, so it was very difficult to find international wines. A lot of boats were showing up, a lot of customers were coming from abroad looking for some of their favorites, whether it's champagnes or rosés or barolos, and they just couldn't find them here. So there was a real opportunity in the market to start importing and providing these various products. And the country has grown in the sense that people have learned a lot more about wine over the years. I think their tastes have become more sophisticated, more expansive. Anyway, they now understand the difference between different grape varietals, between different regions, and are starting to appreciate all the differences in the types of wine that they can buy now, whether here or at the supermarket. Everybody, and it's not something unique to Montenegro. Wine is, the go-to drink when you eat out, and often even when you eat at home. You go to dinner and it's always about what wine you're going to have. It's never about vodka or about beer. It's really largely about wine. Wine is intricately linked with gastronomy. So the challenge for us, of course, is introducing the right wines at a good price to a new audience so that they can gain an appreciation for all the different variations that this drink has to offer. There's definitely a coffee culture. Rakia and wine are very different, and I think people drink them at different times. Rakia, a lot of my friends have it for breakfast. But mainly they would have it after dinner. So it really is a digestif, like a grappa or a cognac. It's a pure alcohol. It is a dead thing, if I can refer to it that way, because spirits don't evolve. Once they're in a bottle, that's it. Whereas wine is constantly evolving, constantly changing. So it's kind of a more interesting thing. And because it's organic, it really goes well with food. And it's a lot of fun to sort of match and see how the wine improves the food, how the food improves the wine. If you get the pairing right, then you are elevating the experience on both fronts. Yeah. Spirits you have on its own. Grappa you drink by itself. I think it starts in restaurants and wine bars. Really the frontline people who are selling wine every day, they need to know more about it, and they can convey that knowledge to their customers. So. But people are starting to understand what it's about, and when they come in, they're often asked, what do you like? Do you like things that are buttery and creamy? Do you like things that are really sharp and acidic? Do you like things that are very full-bodied, peppery, rich? And then once you understand what a customer likes generally or what they're looking for, then you can sort of start to move them in the right direction. You can also explain the differences between all these different wines. And I think once people start to realize how really interesting and diverse this drink can be, then their curiosity is piqued and they'll come back and try it again and again. So there has not been a great deal of wine education in Montenegro compared to what you might find in other countries so far, but it's getting better all the time. The more experience abroad people have, certainly a lot of the international hotel groups or restaurant groups that are coming into Montenegro are bringing with them people with real expertise, and they're teaching all of the frontline staff, not just about wine and wine service, but about food and everything that goes along with it. But the best thing about wine is it's really fun to try and experiment. Yeah. So it's a pleasure to take home a few bottles or order some online to be delivered, and then just yourself or with your friends try all sorts of different things and teach yourself all the differences. There are a lot of places where, it's here's our wine list, and then you're supposed to
Yes.
decide, right? And often there's not enough information given to you about the wine, maybe just the name and the producer. We work really hard to make sure that the information that people are giving on their wine lists is accurate. We make sure that all the staff who are working with our wines, anyway, have had a chance to taste it and ask questions about it and learn about it. It's a process, right? You can't go from 0 to 100 right away. I don't know if you visited some of the wineries in the areas around Scatter Lake, for example, but they are absolutely stunning. And the producers themselves understand the value and the importance of wine tourism. So a lot of the tasting rooms are beautifully done. A lot of the producers are offering estate visits where you can tour the vineyards, where you can even be a part of the process. They have showrooms, tasting rooms. I know that a number of hotels are actively promoting the tours to customers who are here, as do we at Crush. One of the roles that Plantaze plays is with technological support. So Plantaze has played a sort of key role in educating this generation of winemakers. They have a lot of experts who help. They share a lot of the knowledge about wine growing in Montenegro, things that you have to watch out for, pest control, for example. So there's a good deal of information transfer and technology transfer that's coming from someone like Plantaze down to these independent producers. But the independent producers have their own role as well. They're more experimental. They'll try different grapes. They have unique styles. In some cases, they're in different regions. So for example, in Ulcin, you have a very different terroir than you have in Chemskopolje. So you can produce a very different style of Vranac. But even within the same regions, you have great different styles depending on the tastes and the stamp of the particular producer. Well, Montenegro has the best terroir in the world for Vranac. And Vranac is a grape that Jancis Robinson has described as having enormous potential. And that suggests to me that we're not fully realizing this grape's potential. So I think the role is as a leader for the development of this grape varietal, but also we need to sort of find out what it can do. If we talk about sort of former Yugoslavia, it's a relatively small amount of production. I think we produce about 300,000 tons a year of wine. France alone will make nearly 5 million tons. Spain is about 5 million tons. Italy is the largest producer. It's probably about 5 million plus tons. So it's really, really tiny. I mean, all of Yugoslavia together isn't yet top 10. And it's not uncommon for countries to not be noticed. China is the 5th largest producer in the world of wine, but how many Chinese labels do you see in supermarkets, or could you even name? Yeah. So there's lots of work to do in terms of promoting the wine. Croatia has been, I think, the most successful so far. They have a lot of different varietals. They're greatly promoted and appreciated domestically. We have, I think, failed to promote the diversity of Montenegrin viticulture. We do a lot with Vranac, but we don't really do very much with the other autochthonal varietals like Kratošija. You rarely see it, or the white grape varietals like Žilavka or Žižak or Krstač. I'd really love to see a lot more done with these varietals instead of Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon, of which I get it, they're commercial, but there's so much in the world that it is really very hard to find an argument for a Montenegrin Chardonnay when there's 8 million other Chardonnays out there. But something unique, something that people will not have heard of, but they'll want to try, I think that's where Montenegro and the Western Balkans can play a really interesting role, because they can offer varietals and styles of wine that nobody else can do. So I would love to see us explore more these other varietals and really develop a market, both domestically and abroad. I think it's probably 2 things. First, it's commercial. So everybody knows Chardonnay, everybody knows Cabernet Sauvignon, so you can put that on a label and you can easily explain it to the customer. So that is a direct commercial benefit. On the other hand, it's not very interesting, because everybody knows it already. There's nothing unique about a Chardonnay, except that it's from here. And
but it's easy to sell.
who cares? Easier to sell, or at least easier to make understood, because people know kind of what a Chardonnay is supposed to be. Whereas they might see Żelawka on the label and they're like, "Oh, I don't know how to pronounce that," or that sounds strange. But people who are sort of really into wine will want to try these new things, and it's much easier to find a niche in foreign markets for things that are unique and bespoke than something that's commodified, or really all you're doing is competing on price. So I think that's number one reason. And the second reason is it's probably just easier to work with something like Chardonnay because there's so much documented stuff about how to grow Chardonnay, whereas there hasn't been nearly the same amount of research or experience on things like Žižák or Krstač. But that's, I think, what we need to embrace as a country and a region is these really wonderful local varietals and sort of trying to see what potential they have, both in terms of quality and in terms of foreign markets. We can't just all grow French varietals. That's not interesting. Let's explore the national varietals that we have, the same way that we would national spirits like rakia or national foods. Let's create some great national wines. It's a great question. In a number of countries, there are actual certification processes that you need to go through to be certified sustainable or organic or biodynamic. And Montenegro, we don't have those systems in place yet. I do think a lot of producers try to work at least sustainably and probably organically, just because it's the right way to do it. It's going to give you the healthiest grapes and the healthiest vines over the long run. Even in France and Italy, a lot of companies that are not actually certified still work organically and certainly sustainably because that's become the norm now. I do think that as an industry, winemakers have embraced this philosophy. I would like to see more of a certification element attached to it, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. Yes, I'm generally speaking, but it can go much beyond that. For example, having biodiversity within the vineyards. So 20, 30 years ago, the thought was you can only have the vines. And now the thought is that the area, the spaces between the vines should have a lot of other types of plants to promote more, insects being to living there, to have greater diversity that makes the soil healthier, that makes the air better. And that will in turn improve, the conditions for the vines. So, the thoughts on all of these subjects is changing all the time and generally for the better. But certainly the fewer chemicals we can use at any point in the process, the better.